rules in the stock market for that exact reason, but not for prediction markets yet. And the popular prediction market Kalshi recently banned politicians. They fined a handful of political candidates for betting on themselves. But it all comes amid growing questions about how political insiders can turn private information into a quick payday. Business reporter for Axios, Nathan Bomey, is here on set with me. You've been following this. You and I were talking about how crazy it is that there are no regulations on these prediction markets, and it touches everything from Survivor to political campaigns to foreign undertakings that the U.S. government might have. So when you take the full breadth of this, I mean, what are you focused on, and how can we prevent these kinds of things from happening when people have such unfair inside advantages?
Well, there are a lot of people who have unfair inside advantages, and I think you can see that because you're seeing, for example, people are making money on what the military is going to do or how well a political candidate is doing. And that NPR story did a great job of showing that sometimes those bets can easily be placed in coordination with the release of a new poll. And so there are all sorts of implications here, and there is a lot of gray area about how much of this is not legal.
Especially when you can place these bets and you don't know who has access to internal polling from a campaign, when that next public poll is going to drop. And I know that lawmakers took an action, at least in the Senate, to say, okay, senators can't do this, but who's to say that their chiefs of staff, their legislative directors, other staff, either in their Senate offices or then on political campaigns, can't be doing this still, too?
Yeah, and part of the problem here is, for example, who qualifies as an insider? Yeah, yes. we all agree, I think, that a senator is going to qualify as an insider. But what about the spouse of the senator? Or what about the spouse's friend? What about someone at the coffee shop who overhears something that the senator says? Where do you stop with the insider information? I remember I interviewed once a dentist who had inside information on the performance of a baseball player he was treating because the baseball player was not going to play that day because of his procedure. Does that qualify as inside information? I don't know. And I think that's part of the challenges the regulators have.
So where does it go then?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a very good chance that there's a coalescence here, an agreement that, OK, we don't want this, but I'm not sure that Congress is going to take broad action. I mean, certainly the president, his family has a vested interest in the success of prediction markets. Donald Trump Jr., an investor in Polymarket, an advisor to Kalshi. So although the president has seemingly expressed some skepticism about prediction markets publicly, I think a lot of folks would be pretty surprised if he cracks down.
So you're talking about what Congress might do, and certainly that would be the first place that I would look to. But there are financial regulators that are involved in this as well. And I perhaps ask this question, and our viewers and I have the backdrop of the Don Jr. of it all and the ways that the Trump family is entangled in these big prediction markets. But don't financial regulators have a reason to say we should at least put some guardrails on this?
Certainly. Under the Biden administration, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission was starting to crack down. But then the administration changed, and now there's only one sitting member of the CFTC. Mike Seelig, this chair, has been very pro-prediction markets. Now, he has said that they're insistent on ensuring market integrity, but a lot of people view the CFTC right now as cheering the prediction markets along.
And I think for the reasons that you talk about in the backdrop, it makes sense to try to help explain why there might be some reluctance to regulate something that the president's own family is clearly vested and involved in. This is fascinating, and it's a story that's not going away. Business reporter for Axios, Nathan Bomey, please keep following it. We're going to have you back. We'll talk more about it. Thank you.
Thank you.